I recently went to Japan because I'm looking around to try to find a better life for myself and maybe for you. In this video, I'm going to tell you the 3 things that I think Japan does way better than most other places in the world, especially America. Look at that ugly Activate Windows thing. Is this what your Windows 10 looks like? When you try to go and change your color scheme or your background, does it say, oh, sorry, you got to activate? You need this dark theme. You can go buy a retail CD key if you want to. It's going to cost you over $100 typically, maybe a lot, maybe $150. And if you're buying Office, it's going to be a lot more than that. Or you can do like I do and grab an OEM CD key. It's the exact same product when you buy an OEM key. It's just this is the price that the big corporations and stuff pay when they buy them and put them on laptops or whatever when they buy them for their offices. So everyone should get the same price, and that's why I always buy OEM keys, and I do it on whokeys.com. We have Windows 11, and you can also get Office. Pick the version you want. I'm going to get Windows 10 Pro. By using coupon code TS25, you can get 25% off these prices here. So go ahead and put TS25 in here as your coupon code, hit apply, and then you can see we can get Windows 10 Pro for $14.85. Once you're finished, if you want to access your key, you click on your name on the top right, click on User Center, and you'll see My Purchase Orders. Right here, you'll be able to view the keys that you've purchased just by clicking on View Keys and Codes. Then you will see your code right here. Just go ahead and copy this code, press Start, type Activate, and you'll see activation settings come up. Click on that. Then click Change Product Key. Right there, you can paste in your code and hit Next, and then you will be activated. It's very simple. And while you're on WhoKeys, be sure to check out some of their new stuff like their wireless mice and mechanical keyboards. All right, now to the regularly scheduled video. So there's 2 Japanese words, and this is the first thing that I think is better in Japan. Shotengai, yokocho. Now in Japan, they do not have zoning that allows for only residential. Like in America, we have the suburbs where it's only residential, and we have all these houses in a big area, and if you want anything, you have to get in your car and drive to a nasty, ugly, disgusting strip mall parking lot and go inside, so you don't even get a chance to see your neighbors, and whenever you do, you're usually peering out the window being like, hey, it's those people next door, what are those bastards up to? And that's the extent of the community that we have in America, because our infrastructure is built in a way that discourages communities and it discourages local hangouts. And Japan is like the opposite to the extreme because of their Shotengai and their yokocho. And they sort of evolved because every house is allowed to have a business. So a lot of the houses are 2 stories or 3 stories and they're narrow, and the bottom floor will be just a small shop where they do something. They do embroidery or knitting or whatever. And then the house that's next door, they'll sell tofu that's made right there and it's delicious, and they can fry it up right there, or they can give you some tofu to take home. And then next door is a little convenience store with coffee and water. And then right beside that, there'll be a place that just has produce, vegetables. And then beside that, you'll have a place that's only fish. So what you'll do is you'll walk downstairs from where you are, walk over to the Shotengai that's maybe a block or 2 away, because there's 15,000 of them in Japan. And then you can walk up and down the street and buy what you need and go back home. You do not need a car at all. And the areas are extremely safe for walking. Like pedestrians are 2.5 times safer, and that is because of the way the infrastructure is built. The shopping streets, most of them don't allow cars. They're only pedestrians and bicycles. And a lot of them are covered. They'll build, like after you have like a bunch of shops that'll pop up in an area, they'll put an awning over top of the entire street. And some of these are huge. And now Shotengai, a lot of times they'll have different themes depending on what happens in the area, but it usually grows organically. So one Shotengai will mostly be the big stores, and sometimes it'll have chains, but then you'll go to an area that's more residential, and the Shotengai will only have grocery shops and local stuff, local coffee shops, and maybe like a convenience store that has also some silverware bins and stuff that you need for your home. So it's extremely convenient to live this way, in my opinion, and everything was really reasonably priced. Now, the quality of the produce that you get in Japan is on another level. I don't know how they do it because organic is not something that they do there. Like, it's just not part of the culture. I was there right in time for all the beautiful apples, and oh my God, they're so delicious. But everything is so fresh. The fish, so fresh. The vegetables it's like mind-blowingly fresh. If you don't like going out and getting fresh vegetables and cooking, and you like Walmart, then it's not for you. But for me, I love living this way. Now, when you're in the Shotengai, there's also something called a yokocho, and that are the side alleys. Now, in America, you would see like these little back alleys and stuff. They're usually just used for like dumping garbage in boxes, and they're dirty and dingy. But a lot of the side alleys in Japan have been turned into tiny little bars, tiny izakaya, where you have literally 3 seats in the entire place and 1 chef. And you go in there and you grab beer, There's 3 seats. You talk to the people next to you and you goof off. And then if you want, you can go to the next one over that only serves a certain type of whiskey. And that allows them to be extremely niche. Like, you want to go to a bar that is only for extreme horror films, not just like a, kitschy horror themed creepy place. Like, this place is only for like gore porn. That's it. And it's a little bar, and there it is. They play death metal and watch gore porn, and you drink whiskey, and that's it. And then the bar over, like across the way, it's a maid bar, and it's only for people who want to go have coffee and hang out with bunny girls or something like that. And there's all these tiny little places. It's really cool because you get to sit there and talk to the owner and goof off and have a couple of drinks. And they have really good food for a super inexpensive price. I'm talking like you get 10 skewers and 2 beers for $13. Sometimes you'll have a Yokocho that's just, there it is, it just appears. But a lot of times they branch off from the main Shotengai. And while you can get good food on the main strips in the Shotengai, most of the best food I found was going off into these side little, almost tangent areas that are really cool and creative, lanterns hanging everywhere. You'll find some delicious food in spots that only seat 2 or 3 people. Best sushi I ever had in my life? There were 3 chairs in this tiny little shack. That's it. Delicious. Now let's say you move somewhere in Japan and you're more than 4 or 5 blocks away from a Shotengai. Well, you'll need to use transportation to get there. And what most people do, they don't have a car, they have a bicycle. Now Japan has awesome bicycles with a really low bar in the front. They're built more for cruising and riding. They're not like the American bikes that have a really high seat and the handles down in the front. Those are racing bikes or dirt bikes. They're made for like sports, but in Japan they're made for cruising, so they're much more comfortable. You sit back on them, very similar to Dutch bikes. So you've got a bike and you get to your Shotengai and you shop and then you go home and it's great. And that's it. If you want a car to go out to the middle of, like the mountains or something like that, you can rent one, and that's what I would recommend doing, is not having a car and renting one, because the infrastructure is not built for cars. There's not a lot of street parking. So if you buy a car, the police actually come to your house and measure the area that you have to make sure that you can fit whatever car it is that you're buying. Make sure that you have a parking space that's big enough for whatever car. And if not, you cannot buy that car. The streets are for humans. The infrastructure is built for humans. Now, when it comes to transportation that's further away, well, they've got like the best in the world, in my opinion. The Shinkansen, that's the bullet train. It's a beautiful thing. It's stupid to have all these short flights when you can have bullet train infrastructure. And we don't have train infrastructure in America because that would make the car people sad, and it's stupid. Once you're there, it's like it makes every country that doesn't have high-speed rail feel like a third world country. And once you get to where you're going, you switch over to local rail or the subway, and you can get anywhere based upon that. So the transportation is way, way better in Japan. Not needing a car means I'll save so much money. It's ridiculous. The next thing I want to talk about is the culture. It is a less selfish culture, and that's a huge deal for me because I was not raised in a normal American way. You hear this phrase all the time in America, and they tell it to kids and everything else. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I think that is a disgusting, despicable, evil phrase that needs to be erased. There should be such a thing as a free lunch. There should be such a thing as community goodness. There should be such a thing as giving without wanting something in return. Humans evolved to work together. That's the feeling of lonely. That's because, in the past, if you were all alone, you were probably going to die. You were probably not going to make it. You need to work together with other humans. You need to give and they give back. But you don't do it because, here, this is a sandwich, but you're gonna fucking owe me. That's not how it works. But in America, everyone is like selfish. They're like, I got mine, and that's it. They don't care if the rest of the neighborhood goes to shit. They don't care if everyone else dies around them, as long as I got mine. And that mentality makes the infrastructure break down because one person will have everything and everything else will go to shit, and that makes the whole neighborhood shitty. It's really weird because if they just were a little more giving and a little less selfish, everyone could thrive in that area. And then, if the rich were a little less selfish, they could be like, what? All the tax breaks that we get and all the infrastructure that we get for our nice little beautiful gold streets that we live on, let's spread that out, put some of that into the poorer neighborhoods so they can have better parks and better things. And then that area will be safer. And then the areas around it will be nicer. and we'll have a nicer community to live in. So I put this picture online and I was like, hey, what do you notice? And the first comment I got was from somebody in America, and the response was, they're free for the taking. And that really brings me down to the difference in culture that I'll get to in a second. In America, you see a bike without a lock, you're like, hey, it's free for the taking. In the UK, you see a bike without a lock, you're like, that could be mine, because it's a very selfish culture. Whereas over there, they look at it and they say, that doesn't belong to me. Why would I take something that does not belong to me? It's a cultural thing because you think about the impact it will have on the people. It's a shocking change of perspective. I'm going to talk about where I think that came from as well, because I always like to analyze and be like, why is their culture so different? Well, number one, they have been forced to work together because Japan has more natural disasters per square foot than pretty much anywhere on the planet, and that's by a large margin because they have the typhoons go through there, they have earthquakes, tsunamis, and it's a volcanic island. So it's pretty crazy. And then there's areas in North Japan and Hokkaido that have more snowfall than anywhere on Earth. So they have to deal with a lot of different stuff. When I was in Vermont, I felt like more of a sense of community. And I think a lot of that's because blizzards and harsh weather, and also just the mentality there. Everyone works together in small towns, but you don't have the benefits of the big city. That's one thing. But I think the other thing is just, the old religion in Japan is Shintoism. And people in Japan are not religious. In fact, they usually look at religion as being like a negative thing, being like, oh, you're religious. What are you up to? You're here to like spread your stuff and try to kill us, or what's going on? But Shintoism is more of a philosophy that everything should be respected and venerated. Everything has a kami, which is like a spiritual energy. If you ever see Spirited Away or A Letter to Momo or something like that, you'll see actually a lot of anime, a lot of the Miyazaki stuff. Just everything has spirits, and there's spirits everywhere, and if you disrespect the spirits, they get mad. And that is a philosophy that I think is extremely healthy. Even if you know that it's just an idea, that everything has feelings and everything has rights to be respected. And if a kid goes up and kicks a locker or kicks a wall or scratches something or whatever, it's very likely that a member of the community who's nearby, or a parent or a teacher, will walk over and be like, hey, that thing, how do you think it feels, the thing that you're hurting? Somebody built that. Somebody painted that. Somebody made that for you, and you're disrespecting it. How do you think they feel? So there's a lot of emphasis on how others around you feel and how your actions affect them. Some people say it can be smothering, but I didn't find that to be so at all. I found it to be refreshing. Like, they're like, but what if I want to get on a train and yell and scream on my phone? I really liked living in a place like that because it kind of fit the way I already feel. Like, I don't like to have conversations, or if someone stops me and I'm coming out of a grocery store and they're like, oh, hey, how you doing? I will pull them to the side. And that's what they do in Japan too. They don't stand in front of the doors, but you'll see that all the time in America. Someone will meet somebody, or they'll be like, I saw somebody just standing in front of sliding glass doors at a store, texting somebody, and they're standing right in front of the door. You have to be like, excuse me. And then they look at you like, what the hell, man? We've been trained to be so selfish here. And I want to get away from that as much as I possibly can. Now, does that mean that it's completely smothering and suffocating and you can't be yourself or ever have any fun in Japan? Hell no. Japan felt more alive than anywhere I've been in America. It felt rowdier and wilder and more ridiculous. They kept it to the bars, the yokocho, the izakaya, and places like that. You go to a bar or something, people are really loud, they're having fun, they're goofing off, they're drinking, and it's awesome. You go to like an anime store or something like that, people are talking and having fun and just being themselves. You go to a bus, you go to a train, everyone sits, minds their own business, doesn't talk on the phone. You don't have to worry about people yelling and screaming and making a scene. It's just not part of the culture there. Corporate culture there can be a bit much, it seems. I'm not going to be in that. But if you're someone who's going to have a corporate job, maybe consider how that's going to be. If you don't work long hours and you don't participate in some of the company stuff, it might be weird. They expect long hours. They expect that kind of stuff. So the corporate culture, that's what might be a little bit smothering. So I think, me going there and not having to worry about that, and they're not getting involved in the corporate culture, might be okay. Now, the things I didn't touch on in this video, the cost of living is significantly lower in Japan. I know there's a myth that Japan is expensive, but I don't know where it came from, and it's incredibly stupid because It's way cheaper to live in Japan. The economy is better in my opinion, and people are like, no, the American economy. People measure the economy based usually upon how the big billionaires and the stocks are doing, and that's not what I look at. I look at how many homeless people are there, how are they taking care of the least of these. And in Japan, there's 3,400 homeless people. In America, 650,000. I'll do a separate video talking about the cost of living in Japan, and then I'll do one more talking about the nerd culture in Japan, because that's also a lot of fun. There are some really cool areas that I explored while I was there, like Akihabara, of course, but also Nakano Broadway, where you get like the more old retro stuff. And then in Osaka, there's Denden Town, which is kind of like a small Akihabara that's in Osaka. So I checked out all those, and I'll be talking about those in future videos. Just the nerd culture in general, because it's very cool there and it's a lot of fun. There are some weird things there too. Those are the two other things. They're just kind of like extra bonuses. And there are things that, you may want to consider not going to Japan for, but I'm not going to cover that in this video. These are just the things that I think Japan does better than America. If you think America is better in certain ways, please post that in the comments, because I'm curious now that you've seen the whole video. Post it in there. And I'll hop in and say hi. I'm going to put the more gaming-centric, retro gaming-centric videos on easy mode. If you're not familiar with that, I have another channel now. It's really small and really new. It's just for gaming, and it's called Easy Mode. So it's just youtube.com/@easy mode. And we also have easymode.im, which is a new social network that you can hang out on. It's specifically for people who are into games and retro games. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want, but the goal is to attract people who are into those things more than tech, because that's more fun for me. See you there. Links in the description. Goodbye.
그러니까 아니 군대에서 우리 준비단도 안 했구만. 진짜 진짜 와, 앞장서.